all doing today? We have had a massive amount of snow, so the kids were all home yesterday, but they're all at school today, so it is awesome. Alright, so today we are going to talk about breathing, and we are going to talk about the difference between a 360-degree breath, which I will tell you about a bit later, and belly breathing, and when you should do which type of breathing and how that relates to regaining a functional core, because breathing, as you know, is the basis of it all. Alright, so I am Katrina and I am a pregnancy and postpartum corrective exercise specialist, and I work with mums who have diastasis, recti, to help them move without pain, stop peeing their pants, and in general just getting more confidence about their whole body again. So, what I want to tell you a little bit about is breathing today. And I always talk about 360-degree breathing and getting good back expansion and all of this good stuff. But occasionally, I have a mum who comes to me and she says, I went to PT and they told me to belly breathe. I thought that was wrong. Like, why are they telling me to belly breathe? And what I want to go into today is the difference between a 360-degree breath and a belly breath, and why you would do one versus the other, and why would a PT tell you to do belly breathing? Like, really? So I want to get all into that straight away. So let's start with what is a 360-degree breath? Because this is the breath that you want to learn to do pretty much ongoing. This is like how a kid would breathe. This is how we were born to breathe. We just change our breath due to stress, where we bring it up into our neck, or gripping under our ribs, or other reasons, but we're meant to do 360-degree breathing. So let's have a check about what that means. So with our breathing system, or our core, we have our diaphragm, our pelvic floor. We then have, in the front, we have our abdominals, so that's our TVAs, which we've been talking about for the last few weeks. We have our rectus abdominis, so our six-pack muscles. We have our internal and external obliques, and then we have all our paraspinal muscles, and they're part of the core as well. So when we breathe, when we inhale, the air above our diaphragm goes into our lungs, pushing our diaphragm down, releasing our pelvic floor. So our inhale goes like this, and then our exhale goes like this, okay? So that's our relationship with our diaphragm and our pelvic floor. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Our ribs and our abs and our back, so imagine my thumbs are our back, fingers are our ribs. Inhale, everything expands out to the side. Exhale, everything comes back in. All right, so if you think about it as a cylinder sort of shape, it kind of goes out this way and down on the inhale, back up and in on the exhale. So let's have a quick look. So from the front, we go inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. From the side, we can see it. Inhale, exhale. Now watch. My ribs come out to the side and they go out at the back. The belly goes out, pelvic floor relaxes, exhale. Everything comes back in. What doesn't happen is, see how now my back is working with my breathing versus the expansion that we get with a 360-degree breath where it goes out to the back. But note, my belly does go out. But belly breathing is, so now this is my front, this is my back. Belly breathing is all belly. Okay, now look what happens to my rectus abdominis as I belly breathe. Can you see how the gap gets bigger, right? We don't want that. We don't want all that pressure going out into our diastasis. because we're trying to reduce pressure on that area, on the connective tissue between our rectus abdominis, so that we can regain function and firm that up. But if all day we're doing breathing out and in, so like this, or from the front, we're putting all that pressure into the abdominal wall, and that is causing that gap to keep getting expanding and in, okay? And we don't want that. Whereas the 360-degree breathing brings it all. So there's the same amount of air coming into your system, it's just being distributed differently. Some is coming into your belly, but some's also going into your back. Some's going into your sides. So we get this better expansion, and all of our muscles are working, because then our ribs and everything come back in with our external obliques. Our internal obliques work the ribs going out to the sides. Our rectus abdominis isn't being overly stretched forward. Our TVAs are helping the pelvic floor come up on the exhale. The air coming into our belly releases our pelvic floor. So everything works as this perfect system. And that is what we want to breathe all the time. Well, as much as we can when we're not stressed out because some telemarketer called us, or our kids are sick, or something's happening. But in general, that's how we want to breathe. But I find most people don't get any back expansion because their back is so tight, because their back is doing the front of their core work. And we're going to go into that next week, okay? But we now know what 360-degree breathing is. We know what belly breathing is. And we've heard that as PT tell us to do belly breathing. All right, so why would they tell us? The key here is that they are telling us to do belly breathing as an exercise. And why are they doing that? Remember how I said our diaphragm drops and our pelvic floor releases, and then it comes back up. Now, for some people, they do what's called a paradoxal breathing pattern or a reverse breathing pattern. And what happens with that, and can you see how all the air comes up into my chest? My back tightens and my belly kind of flattens more on that inhale. But then it gets bigger on the exhale. Now, what that means is our pelvic floor isn't being released. Because remember how I said the air needs to go into the belly to release the pelvic floor. So when somebody is got this really predominantly tight back, really breathes up into their chest, they suck their belly in on that inhale, then we need to get them out of that habit. And one of the easiest ways to get them initially out of the habit, because that 360 degrees expansion might be a little tricky for them to like get their head around to start with, is to belly breathe. So it's like, okay, I want you to just start here and make all the air go out into your belly. And that will help you learn to relax the pelvic floor, because suddenly you've got that air coming in, which allows the diaphragm to drop, okay? And that's why a pelvic floor PT may tell you, start with belly breathing. But if you go back after a wee while and you've learned to connect with your pelvic floor, they're not going to keep you belly breathing. It's not a long-term solution. It's a let's teach your diaphragm to drop and your pelvic floor to relax solution. And it's an exercise, not something that you would do all day, every day. And then once you've got that connection coming back and you can feel your pelvic floor relaxing, then they will start teaching you to get back expansion and side expansion and get that proper 360-degree breathing, which is what you want, okay? So it's like an exercise to help you release your pelvic floor and to drop your diaphragm so your core can function as it's meant to. Because remember how we don't want to pee our pants? That's because we want our pelvic floor to work with our breath rather than always be tight, because if it's always tight, it can't tighten when we sneeze, which means it's going to drop. And we don't want that, because that is when we pee our pants. All right? So what I want to tell you is 360-degree breathing is what you're aiming for long term. You may need to belly breathe to help you get that connection with your pelvic floor occasionally, and it's an exercise to do that, but you don't want to belly breathe all the time because that is putting a lot of pressure out onto the abdominal wall. And you may or may not need to do different types of breathing exercises in order to get the ribs to move, in order to get the back to move, in order to get the pelvic floor to relax. I talk about this a whole lot in the foundational program. I even have different exercises to help you with rib expansion, back expansion, getting that breathing correct. There's a whole section and lots of exercises for that in the foundational program. I also want to remind you that my 8-week intensive challenge is coming up in January. I'm super excited. I've got even more new additions into it now to make it streamlined, easier, less overwhelming. I am super excited to test this out in January for you all. But what I wanted to tell you is, if you're on the list for the 8-week challenge, early January, I will be running my regaining a functional core blueprint. So the steps to regaining a functional core before that challenge starts. So if you're on the list, you'll also be invited to do the blueprint with me. And that will be starting very early January before the 8-week challenge. And that's free and everybody is welcome to join it. So make sure you're on the wait list. I will put the link below for you after this. And next week, we are going to be talking about some of the other breathing styles and how they impact your core work and why you may not be getting the most out of your core work if you're breathing incorrectly and your back is taking over. And I'll be giving you some tips to help you know whether your back is taking over or not and how to stop that from happening. All right, chat to you next week.